Hey everyone. So today I'd like to talk a bit about the scents of the season, because I think they are very much what makes this season so special. And I think there are a few other times of the year that I associate so strongly with a specific smell. For one, of course, there's the smell of the pine trees, of the Christmas tree if you have one in your house. We usually get that a bit later, so just shortly before Christmas, but you might add some individual branches beforehand for decoration. And then last year, we already talked about incense. I really like the scent of it. But today I'd like to have a look at some things that are a little more delicious than that. Let's have a look at some spices. So I picked up some nutmeg, some allspice, cloves and cinnamon, as well as some anise and star anise. Let's go through these one by one, shall we? So the interesting thing about spices that, seen from here in Europe, they are kind of exotic. They usually come from very different parts of the world, and are usually differentiated from herbs. So herbs would be dried leaves of a plant, whereas spices, for example, are the bark of a tree, such as here with cinnamon. This smells really strongly. This typical warm scent of cinnamon. And it was very much sought after for a long time. We know that Egyptians already used cinnamon something like 4,000 years ago. There are a couple of different cinnamon trees, so they're not all from the same plant. And of course there's some difference in the specific qualities, but I think the ones that you can buy, they're all equally delicious. Cinnamon comes from China and Indonesia usually, but it's also grown in India, in Sri Lanka, Bangladesh or Vietnam. So many different places. But again, for a long time Europeans didn't know where it came from. And there's one story that I really like. They assumed that it came from the Arabian Peninsula, where cinnamon birds would collect these sticks from foreign lands and use them to build their nests. And then eventually the wind would blow them off and people could pick them up to use them. pretty luxurious birds if you ask me. One spice that I usually use in combination with cinnamon, or that I associate somewhat with it, are cloves. They also smell really nice. Let's add these here. These are from a different part of a plant. These are flower buds. I think you can see it if you look closely. Again, they're native to Indonesia, so somewhat the same area of the world. And they were also known to the Romans and Egyptians, but a little later than cinnamon. Cloves probably only turned up in Europe about 2,000 years ago, or not quite 2,000 years ago. And maybe where you live, you also sometimes make decorations where you would use an orange and then use cloves to stick them inside the orange. I think we sometimes made these as kids. You can also, this one broke. You can also buy it as decoration when it's dried. And it can last for a couple of years if it's dried correctly. Of course, smells really nicely. I only found out today that there's a name for it. It's called Pomander. I hope this is how it's pronounced. It comes from French. It basically means apple of amber, so pomme d'amber. Today we mostly use it as decoration or just because it smells nice, but historically there were many different kinds of these. Also, for example, with rose petals and other things that smelled nicely. And people would use them all for one, to mask bad smells, but they also thought that it would help protect them from infections, or they used them for religious reasons. I read that people also thought it could protect you from witchcraft. I hope that's not a pressing matter anymore today. Let's add that here. So we have the bark of a plant, flower buds, and here we have nutmeg, which is the seed. So once the nutmeg seeds are harvested, they're dried for a couple of weeks. Then you beat them to separate the outer shell, and then you can collect these actual nutmegs. And interestingly, the outer part can also be collected and dried. It's a spice called mace that has quite similar qualities, but it's a little more delicate. And unfortunately I don't have a picture here of what it looks like, but it's really, really gorgeous, of red color. So, of course we don't get to see actual nutmeg trees here. But they're really beautiful. They are also from Indonesia, and the earliest evidence that we have that people used nutmegs is from 3,500 years ago. So almost as long as cinnamon. Again, nutmeg came to Europe a little later. It made its way to India, then Constantinople in the 6th century, and eventually to Europe. But for a long time, people kept its origin hidden. For good reasons. Then I have some allspice here. Here it says that it's a literal firework of different scents, similar to pepper, cloves, cinnamon, and nutmeg. So in terms of flavor, somewhat similar. But the interesting thing about allspice is that it comes from a very different part of the world. This one comes from Central America, and it's the dried berry that, if I remember correctly, is harvested while still unripe. And it really smells a little peppery now that I've opened it. There's some really small ones in there. Very cute. Then we have some aniseed. Let's add that here. So aniseed are seeds. So again, a different part of the plant. We have bark, flower buds, seeds, berries, and very, very small seeds here. Aniseed has been cultivated in Egypt for about 4,000 years. And it's similar to star aniseed. This one looks a bit poor. Oh, let's turn it over. But it's a different plant. They just happen to have the same kind of oils that make them taste, well, the same way. Star aniseed comes from China and Vietnam, where star aniseed is also used quite a lot in different spice mixtures. I admit I don't usually cook with it. I just use it to make mulled wine and for decorations because it looks really cute. This is part of a flower that's dried. And with aniseed, I know some people don't particularly like it, but there's a specific type of Christmas cookie that I absolutely love. And it's made with aniseed. There we go. And of course you can add some more scents to this, like maybe vanilla, of course. And all together it creates this really specific atmosphere that I think we all associate with Christmas. And just taking in these scents can really be a specific kind of joy. So I think we'll leave it at that for today.